Bartleby the Scrivener, I would prefer not to, is one of my favorite short stories of all time by Herman Melville. Obviously, the goat when it comes to probably, I guess, kind of the unsung, but now sung. During his day, he was unsung, kind of in the same deal with Kafka, kind of, or in the same deal that some greatest philosophers of the 19th century, like Nietzsche or Schopenhauer, didn't really get that famous until later on. In this same case with Herman Melville, who was just a had an astounding amount of talent, obviously, and input and output of literary tomes. Like like Moby Dick is 800 pages, and it's like, but it's also one of the most beloved books of all time, and it's like kind of a not necessarily a rite of passage, but I think it's because the if it weren't for its size, I think it would be probably read by pretty much every grade schooler ever. Because it's been a while since I've read it, but I'd like to do a review of it too. But I'm definitely gonna brush up on that. But Bartleby the Scrivener came out in the early 1850s, and it's basically it's this little office on Wall Street that is concerned with like legal documents and how properly getting them signed, and and this is back in the day, obviously, when you had to employ oftentimes as much as not the case anymore, but scriveners, which basically scriveners basically are I think what they do is like they copy down word for word on certain documents that are of a pressing nature. So if there's like letters or incoming mail, that pretty much anything that scriveners will basically copy it down, just have another thing. So like right off the bat, excuse me, the nature of the task is already like the bar is like kind of like, okay, you kind of see what's going on. Like this office is kind of a concerned with kind of a slow as molasses kind of workflow, and everybody's like kind of not up in the air, but definitely there's Turkey and Nippers, who are his two kind of go-to copiers, and that. But the thing is with them is that one of them, this I thought was really funny, only is able to work the best in the morning, his most productive and efficacious. And the other is like more productive during kind of later in the day, evenings. And this kind of dichotomy makes it so it actually works out in a way, but at the same time, it's like just barely working out. So there's he ends up getting another guy for running errands named Ginger Nut, but this isn't kind of it's not a enough to keep them going. So like he ends up employing this guy by the name of Bartleby, who he has heard very little of, and right off the bat you don't get like a lot what he's like. All he knows is that he was like employed at the dead letters office, and that's all like in his history. Very not revealing anything about himself, and he's very kind of like closed off and like not really responsive. But when he hires him anyway, because just because of the kind of desperation, I guess, and he ends up being quite productive the first few days. And he basically, he produces a ton of different files for everybody, and but then when he asks him to do a kind of simpler task, Bartleby he says, no, I prefer not to. And that's the very first time you hear that. That becomes the catchphrase of the entire novel. Or I'm sorry, no, the entire short story. And yeah, it's like everybody's like right off the bat, it's like irritated with it. They don't like the way, Bartleby's like, like why does he do, like he's able to do this great grand amount of work in one hand, in one context, and like as soon as it's like down even like to the most measliest thing of like proofreading, and it's like he's just like completely brushes it off or completely ignores him. And eventually he starts to perform gradually less and less tasks until he is confined to like just his office, kind of like a mulling, just kind of like sitting there, kind of just gazing, and he's like kind of in shock, not shock, but kind of a catatonic kind of, just like there's not much going on, or it doesn't seem like there's a lot going on. He doesn't seem to really have an outside life. He doesn't really have any rich inner world either. So there's not like a kind of, oh, he's just a daydreamer either, because he's just kind of like done with it. He's like done with it. So he ends up kind of just living there, and that's what his boss discovers. He's like Bartleby, like, well, what is he doing here after hours? And it's just like completely like, who'd want to stay then? And then he becomes very saddened by this. He's very depressed by knowing, like, dang, Bartleby must have been dealt a pretty bad hand. Like, did he lose somebody to reason? So yeah, there's this in building kind of tension a lot with his coworkers that are like, they're just very irritated by the fact that Bartleby won't do these things and prefers not to do anything. Like, yeah, I mean, I prefer to punch him in his face. That's not actually, I don't know if you think he says that in the novel. I think he says it in the movie though, which is a pretty interesting, funny movie by Crispin Glover starred in it. I'm not sure who the director is, but it came out like 2001, and it's like Crispin Glover just does a great A job on that. He's just like, I prefer not. He's just very like Crispin Glover about it. He's just like, um, it's just slightly endearing and kind of like, but at the same time aggravating, I guess. Like it's like the fact that he will go this far, not further. But the rest of the movie seemed um, a little bit too like weird in areas. It was like trying to be. There's certain characters and stuff like eccentricities and different characters that I felt like were a little bit too pronounced, and I think, yeah, like characters of like uh the one guy that used to be on SNL, I think Piscopo or whatever, like played one of the and then like there was like this secretary character which I thought was just like a little bit overdone comedically. I thought they should have been. I thought it would have probably been better off if they kept it like a little bit more deadpan. But yeah, the back to the story. Yeah, Bartleby ends up staying overnight and not leaving, and very just kind of holding to his own. And eventually he dies of starvation. Yeah, he just stays there so long, and his boss finds out and is like, shocked, obviously, and even more depressed, and finds out because he's preferred not to eat. He's taken that preference so far, and he soon finds out that he heard that with his rumor floating around that Bartleby used to work in the dead letters office, so he wasn't on his resume. Okay, so he the undeliverable letters that he did ends up saying, and then at the end he's like, oh, Bartleby, oh, humanity. So he's basically, yeah, the kind of reason that he's been is because the dead letters is infamously, I guess, like a very dull, monotonous, meaningless job where you are sent dead letters that nobody else knows what to do with, and you have to sort through them, and it can take hours and hours and hours, and even if it's like a 1 hour of doing that, like it's one of those things that it's like, because it takes just enough focus that you can't really you have to kind of sit there and sort through those things. And obviously nowadays you probably just have it's like an automatic thing of sorting through it, like God, thank God. But still, and yeah, so the themes, I think like a lot of this might have to do with a little bit of nihilism too. I'm not sure if the problem with kind of pessimism was as pronounced in the United States during this time, but yeah, I think nihilism definitely shows through with Bartleby's decisions. Like he's preferred not to do anything, and he takes that to its logical conclusion to the point where he, just starves to death. And it's kind of like a tragic, but it's slightly comedic too, because it's like he prefers not to do certain things. That it's like at first, but there's like a kind of like he's holding on to certain things here and there. He's very selective, and then he ends up just kind of just not trying whatsoever, and he's just like really just taking it down, the next level. I guess kind of just gives you the picture, I guess, of how committed he was to but yeah, I think that's all I have for Bartleby the Scrivener, so thank you for watching.